In this tutorial, I want to provide you with an opportunity to just watch someone set up an HTML page rather than just read about it, and also to go over some of the key elements that you might use in an HTML page, or tags, if you will. So the program I'm using here, and I've mentioned this elsewhere, and I highly recommend it, at least as of 2015, is the program Brackets. You can download it at brackets.io. It's a free open source text editor basically. And right now I have nothing. I have no website, I have no CSS file, I have no JavaScript file, and we're going to create a website, a portfolio site, if you will, a map portfolio site from scratch, starting with just this blank page. So one thing you need to do once you have Brackets set up is you need to basically go to an open folder, and we're going to store our website in a single folder in one place. Now we might add more folders within this folder later on, in fact we will, but to begin with let's store it in a single space. So I've created a folder called 468 video tutorial. You can create one wherever you want, on a hard drive, on your computer, whatnot, in the cloud, but find a folder and open it. There's nothing in it. So the next step is I can't do anything in Brackets until I go to File, New. We're going to create a new text document. And in this case we're going to create an HTML document naturally, because HTML is responsible for our content, and that's where we're going to start. So let's start here. You can start with just an HTML tag, but it's generally good practice to start with doc type HTML. That just tells the browser what it's looking at, although it'll know what it's looking at when it reads HTML right away, I believe. You don't need to type that, but I guess it's good practice, and it does come in handy at times. Now, as you can see, we're not getting any code hints, and one of the best benefits of Brackets is the code hinting. We won't get those until we save this file. So let's go to File, Save, and notice we're saving in that folder there, and let's call this index. This is going to be our home page, but make sure you type .html. So we hit that, and now if we look down here, we'll see that HTML is selected, so it knows it's an HTML file type, and these are the code hints it should give us. This is why Brackets is great. It does half the typing for us. Let's type HTML, and it does that. Alright, so we've got that tag. And HTML always needs two additional elements, a head and a body. Right, so we're already well on our way. Let's hit save. We now have an index page. It's completely blank, but it should function. Now there's stuff you can put in the head. Generally you should put something about a character set, UTF-8. I'm not too worried about that right here. You do check out the W3 Schools tutorials for the particularly perfect nomenclature that you should include. Once you write it once, you can always go back to any web page you've created and copy and paste it. But one thing you do want to add to every web page you make is a title, the thing that shows up in the browser tab. So the first tag or element I'm going to show you is the title element, and we will call this Ian's HTML portfolio. I don't know, I'm making a title up here. Great, let's hit save. Notice it already makes the close tags for us, so I don't have to bother typing that. And one great thing about Brackets is we can go over here. Sorry, I'm going to scoot this over for a second. And we can click on this lightning bolt to get a preview of what our website looks like. Theoretically. There we go. And it should open it up in your default web browser. And we should get nothing. This is perfect. But notice up here on the tab it says Ian's HTML portfolio. So the title is showing up. It's working. Alright, let's go down to the body. And there are some key tags that you need to know about. First of all, generally, most of you probably know this one already. We can write paragraph. So the P tag means paragraph. It's basically simple text. This is a standard text thing. And notice over here, if we have the browser up in the other half, we can see the changes immediately. And when you create new paragraph elements, it automatically puts spacing between the paragraphs. So this is a second paragraph. So just like this, we're getting content. I could copy and paste a big chunk of content. Actually, let's go do it right now. I'll open a Word document. Probably don't want to see my department's charter. It's kind of dry. Alright, we'll go to this preceding paper. I'll take this abstract, I'll hit copy. So I'm not saying you always want to write all of your content in brackets. That's what I'm kind of getting at here. It's often better to be able to copy and paste it from somewhere else. So notice in between the paragraph tags here, there we go, we have all of this content. Often you want a heading. There are different headings. There's heading 1, and we could change this first paragraph to being a heading 1. And I want to point something out here. Notice that when I typed H1 here, we got this hot pink fuchsia red type error bar warning. Can you think of why it's giving me an error? I just changed this P to an H1. It's because there's no closing H1 tag, it's a closing HP tag still, and it doesn't like that. So it's basically warning us that there's an error in the code. If I make that an H1 and now reads correctly, H1 starts here, it ends here. We now have a heading title, or a heading. If we want, the H's go through at least 6, I think that's as high as they go. We could make this an H2, which will be a bit smaller. Let's try an H5, what the hey. Quite small, doesn't even really look like a heading. And we'll see what you can do with these later. Right now it seems kind of like, why would you ever use an H5 tag? It looks ridiculous. But with CSS you can reformat these to look in a variety of ways. So you can think of these as kind of having 6 levels of headings, and you can always change them later with CSS. So let's make this an H2, because H1 is often a little bit too in your face. And we will call this Ian's portfolio page, 468 portfolio page. Alright, so you've got that down, paragraphs, H1s, H2s, etc. Some of the most important things that websites do, however, are they allow us to interact with other pages and to create hypertext, and hypertext is what kind of revolutionized human communication. So how do we make links to hypertext? Well, it's pretty easy. I'll start with a straight up link here, and then I'll show you how to add a link within a paragraph text, so up here. So A is for link, and what we're going to do is just write some text here. Let's see, go to CNN, I don't know. And as we notice here, it doesn't do anything. So see there's this box around it. This is another cool thing about brackets. There's a box around go to CNN. Why is that there? Because right now the cursor is in this element. So if you put the cursor in an element, it highlights where the cursor is in brackets. It shows you what you're editing on the page over here, which is fancy. But this isn't doing anything. It's not linking. That's because with the A tag, you have to put in a little extra code. So within the opening element of the element, the opening tag here, you put space, and you'll memorize this before long, href equals, and then in quotes you put the web address. And you need, if you're typing a web address for a place outside of your website, you always need to put the http:// and then you can go gangbusters. So we'll type that. Let's see. So now, as you'll see over here, we have go to CNN. We can click on that, and it will go to CNN. Alright, so let's look at this for a second. href is basically saying this is the URL you should go to. This is the reference, the file you should find. The quotes are because this is a string. And basically any value that you put in these tags or elements, you'll see this a lot actually. You'll type the attribute that you're about to give a value for won't be in quotes, it'll be an equal sign, and then whatever you type it goes in quotes, and the browser knows, okay, now I'm looking at the value of this attribute. So the value of this reference attribute is in quotes, and it's go to this website. And basically notice that this is with inside, the href is inside before we even close the opening tag. It's inside there. Then what we have is the text that we want to show up as the link, and then we close the tag out. So once we do that, as you can see over here, we have the go to CNN link, and it's perfect. Alright, so moving along, what if we wanted to add a link in the middle of our paragraph tag? Well, what's really cool about HTML elements is that you can nest them within one another. And this is where it gets quite powerful. Because you have a start and a closing tag, a start and closing tag, you can start a new tag somewhere within another tag and then close it out. So let's say that we wanted to put a link around the word cartographers. It would be pretty easy. We can type a href equals, in quotes, and I always tend to do this where I close it first, and we could put http www.jmu.edu. I don't know, that's not exactly the most inspired thing. And then here's the trick. Brackets created the close bracket here for the A. We'll just cut that, so you Command X or Control X, or go up to Edit, Cut, and we will put that at the end of cartographers without a space. Paste it there. And now let's hit save. If we go up here, we'll see cartographers is underlined, and if I open that up, it goes to James Madison University. There are a bunch of other tags that you can put in here as well. For example, what if I wanted to emphasize or italicize some text? Pretty easy to do. And here I can, this is not the best way to do it, by the way, but I'm just showing you the idea of nesting. M for emphasize, which is italics. I'll cut that close tag and paste it after what I want. And then over here, as we'll see, it is like so. So we've got basically paragraphs, we have H1s, we have links. Another important thing is sometimes you don't want spaces between your breaks in the line. So for example, if I create another paragraph here after this paragraph, what if I want this to break, this paragraph to break right here before and then go to the next line? Well, given how web pages are constructed, I have to move this, I can't even break it there, and I want it to not go all the way across the screen. I want it to go to the next line. What we can do is we can add a simple BR, and this is a tag that does not require a close tag. And notice when I add that BR, it knocks the next word down a line. So it's a break. And notice that there isn't this space. Like with paragraph tags, there's a space between the paragraphs. A break is just a clean, a full stop return. Let's add another one. Let's add another one. And notice when I hit return in brackets, HTML doesn't recognize these, more than a single space. So anything more than a single space, HTML does not recognize. I could add 15 spaces here, and there will only be one space in the HTML document. So returns and multiple spaces don't really impact it. They go unread. That's important to remember. All right. But if we were to make a list, this isn't necessarily the most ideal way of making a list. What if we want to have bullets or a bulleted list of some sort? And one reason we're going to cover these tags right now is because they are very important when you're creating navigation bars. So in order to make a list, the first thing you generally want to do is create an unordered list, and we could say this is a list we are making. And then within these tags, it's a good idea to put list items. So a list item is an item that will have a bullet. And I don't know why this isn't updating per se. Maybe this can't be nested in. There we go. Alright, so this is a list we are making, and then here we have our first bullet, list item 1, list item 2, list item 3. And so just like that, we have lists. Now if we wanted to have a link in these lists, I want you to stop, hit pause if you need to, and think, how would I make this word item into a link to ESPN.com? Here's how. href equals http. I think it's actually ESPN Go, but that should work. It makes the close bracket here. That's not going to work. We'll cut this and paste it right after the word item. And now if we go up here, so we see the word item goes to ESPN.com. Okay, cool. So there are list items. Finally, but not last but not least, I guess we might say, are divs. So HTML, you can think of their elements. It's basically arranging your content on the page. Right now we've arranged some content into lists. We can style these with CSS into this list, so each list item becomes a navigation button. So though it looks heinous when you're writing it in HTML, you want to think about how to break down your content into manageable chunks, and chunks that you can rearrange on the page using cascading style sheets, which we'll talk about in the next video tutorial. So one way of kind of organizing your content is into something called divs or divisions. And it's basically compartmentalizing your web page content into chunks that you can then style independently, and also, and this is crucial, arrange on the page independently. So with CSS, we can start to, if we arrange stuff into divs, we can start to move it horizontally across the screen and place it, and also vertically. We can layer these divs over one another. Now, why might this be relevant for web cartography? Well, for example, if you want to create a, let's say you bring in a Google map, and you want to create a title that goes over the Google map, but only the text does, it has a transparent background. Well, in HTML, if anything you write kind of gets put in order, regardless, there's no real layering. But if we put a title in a div and then use CSS to say make this div higher and put the map div under it, we can put a title on top of a map. Or if you want to create a legend, you put the legend in a separate div, and then as we'll see with the styling sheets, we can say move this legend div up vertically so it's on top of the map, and move the map underneath it. So what you want to do always when you're creating your HTML to begin with is you want to compartmentalize different chunks, different elements into divs that that make sense. And this is one reason it's actually often a good idea to sketch your website first, so you have an idea of, you can start thinking about, well, should this go in the same kind of chunk or div as this item here. What I'm going to do here is let's take a look at this. So let's pretend that we want the title to be kind of its own header. We're going to create this into its own header, and we also want these list items to be in this header section too, because we want to make these into nav buttons. So let's just start here up here. The div tag is pretty straightforward. It's div, and I'll cut this, and I will hit enter a couple times, and remember, enters don't do anything, notice, to your web page here, so don't panic about having lots of spaces, and I'll paste this here. So now you don't see anything. When you're playing with divs, you often don't see any major changes. This H2, I'm going to get rid of these italics here as well, because that's not the best way to do it. This H2 header is now in a div. It's in its own div, and so with CSS, not only will we be able to manipulate how this H2 looks, this heading looks, we'll be able to manipulate the div that it's in. So we have a lot of control. We could make, we could change the color and style of this header, and we can also change the style of the entire div that it's in. But don't worry about that yet. Now, I also will want some of these menu items. I want them up here in this header. So when I'm talking about making a header, what I'm really talking about here is doing this. Creating a header like this. So this is a heading text. We have an image in the back. It's in a header div. We have an image behind it, and then we also have these nav buttons here. This is what we're going to be creating. So I need to take these potential menu items, these list items, which will turn into a menu, and I'm going to cut those, and I'm going to paste those in this div. So notice now we have a couple elements in this div, and that's fine. We can see here nothing's really changed visually. We just cut these items, and they've been moved up. Down here I'm going to create another div, and we can kind of think of this as our content div. So I'll close it out down here. So when I click on div, it highlights where this div is. It's all of this stuff. All of this stuff, this will be our content div, and this div will be our header div. Alright? And that's where we're going to stop. We basically have a simple website. Oh, there's one other question that often gets asked, and it's the most exciting part for people creating a website the first time. How do I link to another page in my site? Well, right now we just have index. You always want to name your homepage index. Always, always, always. The first page you create for your website, the main page, save it as index.html. But let's go up here and create a new one. And let's hit save. And let's call this page 2, for lack of a better term, HTML. And let's just quickly create an HTML page. It's really important that if someone links to this page, they're able to link back. So since I'm making this page right now, let's create a link back to our index page. I want you to think about how you might do this. All you have to do, because of the structure, we're in this folder here, 468 video tutorial. We have these two pages. When we put this on the web server, we upload everything inside this folder to our web server. So for index to find page 2 and page 2 to find index, we don't have to write HTTP or anything. If you just write the file name, as long as they're in the same folder, this should be index, excuse me. This page will look for something called index.html in the same folder. That's all you need to type. So link back to home page. This should now link back to the home page. Alright, so now the trick is, let's hit save here. The trick is on index, let's link to this. And since this is going to be our navigation bar up here, let's put a link in this. So list item 1, let's do a href equals page 2, and in here we will call this page 2. So let's see if this loads. Alright, we have this. Let's click on page 2, goes to page 2. See, it says page 2, back to page 1, back to page 2, yada yada yada. And that's how you link. Okay, so now let's do one last thing. I keep saying one last thing, but there's always one more thing, isn't there? Let's show you how to embed photos. So photos, or images, I guess is the more appropriate phrase, are very important. Obviously, the web is no longer text-based. It's actually, a two-way street and interactive, etc. But photos really were the first key component in making the web a little bit more multimedia, if you will. So how do we do that? How do we embed photos? Well, there are tags for almost anything, but the image tag is one of the earliest and most important. So let's just pop up our website over here again. And what I'd like you guys to do is, I'm just going to delete this. No, I don't want to delete that. But what you can do over here is if you right click, you can create a new folder. Now let's create an images folder. I already have one, so I'm not going to, but create a folder called images. Alright, and then again, this is just should be simple enough to find through My Computer or Finder on Mac OS. You have a folder here with all of your stuff in it, and so we have our website folder, our root directory. We have an images folder, and find a picture and paste it in there. Your picture should be JPEG or PNG. I took a photo off an old Razr phone I found lying around, and basically it's a photo of me with my dog. I put it in there, and as we can see, if we create a folder where all of our images are, it'll always be easy to find images we're looking for. No matter how many web pages we have, we know that all of our images will be in the images folder. We can link to them, and it's good. So one thing I do encourage you to do is to start creating folders, as you see as I go on with these lessons, so that you kind of organize your files, your website files by data type. So we have an images folder here. Alright, so over here, once you've created that, let's go over here and embed our first image. And so this is pretty easy to remember, IMG for image. And then just like for a link, we need to say where is the image. So before we close the image tag out, notice I haven't closed it yet. Let's type src for source. And again, this stuff will have to go in quotes. And we will close this down like this. And now let's start typing images for the images folder. And I'm stopping here after I type I because look, it's saying, do you want to go to the images folder? And we do. Our picture is in this images folder. So basically, we don't have to give a specific, absolute URL, because this is going to be in the same root folder. It'll be able to look in the images folder. I click on that. When I click on that, it should give me a list of all the photos I have in there, and this is the one I want. I click on that, and voila, it does the work for me. And if I go over here, we see the picture of Meta, my dog, and I in the snow in Minnesota. So just like that, we can embed a photo. Now notice that the go to CNN isn't on the next line. Why is that? Because we didn't put a break in, and also this isn't in a paragraph, this link. So if we wanted that to be on a separate line, we'd have to make a new paragraph, and now it'll be on a separate line. Alright, so CSS you can use to resize your images, and since this is from an ancient Motorola Razr, I wouldn't want to make this bigger, but if I wanted to make it a thumbnail size, we'll learn how to do that later. What if you wanted to make your image have a link? How could we do that? Well, that's a really good question. All we'd have to do is put this inside of an A tag, right? And so instead of having text, let me finish the link here, HTTP. So instead of having text be the link, you can put link text in here, and that would be underlined in purple or whatever. You can use an image. And so by putting, we have link with the reference where it's supposed to be linking to, and then inside of this tag we have an image showing where the image is, etc., closing that out, and then we close the link out. And now if I go over here, we get the little hand when we scroll over the picture, and I can click on this and it will go to my website. Ah, there I am. Okay, so that is how you embed images. In the next tutorial we're going to organize this a little bit better, and then we will start playing with some CSS. Alright, see you soon. Thanks for watching.